Good morning and welcome to Face the Nation. There has been yet another seismic shift in the 2020 presidential campaign, and this one has ramifications that could last for generations. The vacancy left by the death of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg has already become a brutal political battle as mourners came out in cities across the country to honor her despite the pandemic. The largest crowds included her home state of New York and at the Supreme Court here in Washington. We begin our coverage this morning with CBS News chief legal correspondent Jan Crawford, who is in Morgan County, Alabama. Good morning to you, Jan. President said last night at his rally that he will appoint a woman this week to replace Ginsburg. What are you hearing about the timing of that announcement?
Well, sources tell me it is going to happen with lightning speed at some point this week. There's already a very, very short list with just a few top contenders. The president said it's likely, as you said, to be a woman. He mentioned two yesterday, Judge Amy Coney Barrett of Indiana and Judge Barbara Lagoa of Florida. Now, Barrett is kind of the presumptive frontrunner. Trump interviewed her for the last vacancy. She's a strong religious conservative, a favorite of religious conservatives, strongly anti-abortion. She had a tough appellate court hearing, but she stood strong, which conservatives like. But there is growing momentum for Barbara Lagoa. She's got an incredible, compelling personal story. First-generation Cuban American. She grew up in Miami. She went to Columbia Law School, like Justice Ginsburg. The question with her is timing. If the White House wants to move, as it said, this quickly, the train may have already left the station with Amy Coney Barrett on board.
We know that the court had already scheduled its new session and a key hearing November 10th for the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. In the short term, what happens now that Ginsburg isn't on that court?
Well, in some ways, it's just going to be business as usual. There are vacancies before, so the court has rules on how it operates. They still hear arguments now by telephone, of course, because of coronavirus, and they'll decide cases. But the question is, with 8 justices now, these controversial cases that might have been 5-4 could be 4-4. So what does that mean if there's a 4-4 split? The lower court decision in those cases would simply be upheld. There'd be no binding Supreme Court decision in those cases. It's just the lower court ruling stands. This also somewhat dilutes the power of Chief Justice John Roberts. Remember, he's kind of switched over in some of those controversial cases and joined the liberal justices for a 5th vote. Now, he's not going to be able to rein in the conservatives as much as he's done in the past. There's another option. They also could hold the case over for re-argument when a new justice joins the court. They've done that many times in the past.
We know for many reasons, including the pandemic, this is going to be a really unusual election year. For the possibility that this could be contested and we could see what happened back with Bush v. Gore and that an election ends up in front of the Supreme Court, what would happen in the scenario you just talked about with this split?
Well, it's 2020, right? So, of course, we've got to think about that this could happen. And in that case, if there's a tie, the lower court decision would stand. That would be the final say. But I do not think, Margaret, that will happen. I do not think the justices on this Supreme Court would let the lower court ruling say, you've got the final word. We just can't come to a decision. I don't think they're going to do that if it comes to that.
Jan, this is a firestorm, but there's also been a lot of praise for Justice Ginsburg from across the political spectrum. Given the moment we're in, you've covered the court for so long. What stands out to you?
Margaret, I have to say, I've never seen anything like it. Like the outpouring of grief, the political battle over what's going to be her replacement, and of course her outsized impact on the law. People identified with Ginsburg as a trailblazer, a pioneering figure. They felt like they knew her. For them, this is personal. So it would be a traumatic death, no matter who was in the White House. But now with the election a month and a half away, the president indicating he's going to move, like I said, at lightning speed. There's never been anything like it. There have been battles to replace pioneering justices in the past. Thurgood Marshall, of course, comes to mind with Justice Clarence Thomas. That was brutal. But that was in 1991, Margaret. 2020 is completely different.
Indeed. Jan Crawford, thank you so much for your insight.